All right, hello again, guys. Okay, so at this point, hopefully you're done your budgeting assignments. Now, I know when we started the course, I asked you guys what topic you're most interested in, why you took this course, and many of you were interested in learning about investing. So, investing is a really great thing to know about, but it is important to not jump into it blind without any knowledge because it can be risky and you can lose some money. So I hope that you kind of watch these videos, that you take some time to learn, but it is very important that you do your own research before you would jump into investing your money. But hopefully this will help broaden your knowledge and give you kind of a bit of a foundation. All right, so in this topic, and this is the last topic in personal finance, we are going to compare and contrast the different types of investing tools. So many people know about stocks, but stocks are just one form of investing and not always the best way to invest. So I'm going to kind of hopefully broaden your horizons a little bit into some other options that are maybe a little less risky for you. We're going to talk about the risk and return associated with those different types of investments as well. All right, so this video here is just a quick intro. So early in the year, we had talked briefly about saving versus investing, and it is important to be familiar with the difference. So saving is really kind of more for short term. This is where you set aside your money in a savings account within your bank, and the money basically just sits there. All right, it's going to earn you a very small percentage of interest, maybe 1%, but likely that's not enough to really beat inflation. So essentially, it's like an electronic piggy bank, right? Your money sits there, and it's really good to have that for kind of short-term goals like vacation or emergency funds, but your money isn't making you money in a savings account, all right? The savings account is also liquid. When we're talking about liquid or illiquid assets, liquid means you're able to withdraw your cash at any time without really any penalty. So savings accounts, that's your money. You can do with it what you want, when you want. And savings accounts are very, very, very low risk. Basically no risk because pretty well all our bank accounts are CDIC in Canada, CDIC insured, which we learned about earlier, which means our money is pretty well protected, all right? But there's basically no returns, so low risk, but low reward. Investing is really more of a long-term plan, okay? You shouldn't put all your money into investments because it is illiquid, which means oftentimes it's not very easy to withdraw your money. And, you may take a bit of a penalty, you may have to pay a fee to withdraw your money, or you may be required to withdraw your money when the market is down and could involve loss. So money that you're investing should really be set aside for a long time, and you don't ever want to put yourself in a scenario where you kind of have to pull that money out again. So investing is for long-term goals like your child's education or retirement or just kind of having more money in your far future. Investing can be high risk. I don't necessarily want to say they are all high risk, but definitely higher risk than saving. But I'm going to talk to you about the different types of investments and that they themselves also vary in terms of the risk and return. So again, savings accounts, that's kind of what your money should be in right now. You should have, separate savings accounts for your emergency fund, maybe for a future car, future education. Investing is setting aside money that you're not going to need for a long time. But in order to start investing, you don't need to put a lot of money in there. So I think I told you guys that one of my regrets was not investing earlier enough. So if I could go back in time, I would have invested at the age of 18 and even just put $1,000 away. Something that I know I wouldn't have immediately needed, and I could have kind of treated that money as just kind of ignore it for many years. And that money would have, earned me a lot of interest by now. So the advantage of investing early is that compound interest. the earlier you invest, the more time your money has to accumulate that interest. And years is really important. So it's actually not the amount you initially invest is not as important as the amount of time that it is allowed there to sit and earn that compound interest. Now, we talked about investing having higher returns. Some people are very scared of investing because of the risk, but it does result in a higher return. So some people might then think on the other end about why would you want to put your money in a savings account? So we have to be careful here. Like I said, you cannot put all of your money in investments because it is illiquid, and you never want to put yourself in a scenario that you would be requiring that money when the market is down. So you need to have separate savings accounts and emergency funds before you invest, and in addition to the two. Okay, you need both. All right, so when is it time to invest? So this is kind of talking about needing both. So like I said, investing does involve a bit of risk, but it's really the only way that you can allow your money to make you money in the future. So I would suggest you make sure your emergency fund is built up first, that you have some short-term savings accounts for things like a vacation or a car or future tuition. And then if you have kind of any extra money, you invest that for the future. Okay, and again, it doesn't have to be a lot of money. So you don't have to wait till you have $20,000 of extra money. All right, that just doesn't happen, especially when you're young. So even if it's $1,000 that you decide is extra, put that into an investment. All right. And of course, then due to the power of compound interest, the longer, the better. So that's why invest early, but you need to have that emergency fund and a short-term savings account first. Okay, so with investment, yes, it involves a bit of risk. Okay, you are not always guaranteed the return you might expect, and you may even lose money. So you do have to be a little bit prepared for that. And if you're trying to look for investments that offer really high percentage returns, you're going to have to be able to assume some risk for that. So me personally, I don't have loads and loads of extra money, so I tend to opt for medium risk investments with medium return because I'm not willing to do anything super risky if that means that I could lose that money. So that's why, because there is risk, knowledge is power. Okay, you need to have an understanding of the basics of investments and do your own research in order to make a good informed decision on how to do this with your money. Okay, all right. There are many types of investments. If you learn nothing else, I hope you learn that, okay? Stocks are not the only option. There's several ways to invest, and they're not all created equally. So stocks, you've probably heard the word before. That is where you are buying kind of a share in a company. There are also bonds, mutual funds, exchange traded funds, index funds, guaranteed investment certificates. Real estate is also an investment, collectibles. So anything that where your money might make you more money in the future, that's kind of viewed as an investment and typically involves a bit of risk. So this is kind of a bit of a list that we'll go through, but understanding the risk and return of these is very important. So with investing, often things that are high risk have the potential to have a higher return, but because it's risky, that's not guaranteed. Investments that are very little risk or no risk mean your money is not going to have a very high return. Okay, so this is also an important chart to understand risk versus return. Investments that have very little to no risk, they are the safest category of investing, but they have a low rate of return, which means very low interest rate, and you're basically just having your money sit there securely. Okay, so this could be things like GICs, which we'll learn about, your savings account technically, and some pension plans. All right, low risk offer low returns, but again, your money is typically insured or guaranteed. That's going to be your bonds and potentially some ETFs. Okay. Medium risk means a moderate return, not super risky, but still potential to lose some money. So this could be stocks. It's going to depend on the type of company. Mutual funds, real estate, and again, ETFs. It just depends on the type of fund you're investing in. And at the top, high risk. So these are things that are risky that have the potential to give you a high return, but also the potential for loss. So that's things like collectibles, right? I'm sure we've all, heard some items that are collectible that they could be worth many times more than they were purchased, but that's not necessarily always the case. And stocks. Okay, some stocks offer people a very high rate of return, but they can also be risky if the company doesn't quite pan out the way they hoped. All right. Now, I want to talk about some of these accounts. Your RESP, Education Savings Plan, TFSA, Tax-Free Savings Account, and RRSP, Registered Retirement Savings Plan. These are bank accounts that offer kind of tax advantages when it comes to investing. Now, they each have a little bit of restrictions and some contribution limits, but oftentimes people will use these, especially the TFSA, where they put their money into that account first and then invest through that, and then the interest you make is not taxable. So when it comes time for you to invest, you're going to need to do a little bit of digging on these accounts. Again, I would recommend at your age first starting with a TFSA and then investing from there. Okay, it would be like your investment account. It helps with not paying as much taxes on that interest that you might earn. All right, now in terms of general investment strategy, investing is very personal. It's going to depend on how much flexible money you have, how risky you are as a person. So it is really important that if you do this by yourself, you got to kind of think critically, or if you were to meet with an investment manager, you got to make sure that you communicate your goals. So you do need to set goals when investing and really think about your personal risk level. Now, in general, if your goals are long-term and you don't need this money, like you guys are very young, so if you don't need this money really until you retire, you have the potential to start trying higher risk investments. I know that can be scary when you're young because, money is tight, but if you truly don't need that money when you're younger and you're able to leave it there until you're 60, you could potentially go in higher risk investments because you have a longer time for that market and that money to come back. Now, higher risk doesn't mean, companies that are potentially just going to tank, but you have that a little bit more flexibility. If you are having short-term goals, like let's say you're retiring in the very near future, you may want to change your investment portfolio for more low-risk investments to make sure that in the next few years that you need to pull that money out, that it doesn't take a nasty dip. Okay, so younger people can be a bit more riskier. People close to retirement should be a bit more conservative, but it really depends on your money and your personal risk level. Now, the most important key thing with investing, and I'm sure you've potentially heard this before, you need to have a diverse portfolio. So even if you are a riskier person, you should not have all of your money in a one high risk stock. You should have your money in a variety of stocks, or I definitely recommend actually the exchange traded funds. We'll talk about that later. And have some money, again, of course, set in savings accounts or potentially in just lower risk investments. So diversification is your friend when it comes to investing so that all your money is not tied to one thing. All right, that's your intro for today. You're going to be moving on to learning about stocks next.